They say money can't buy happiness, and in my experience, that's absolutely true. But I'll tell you this much. It can sure as hell buy you a front row seat to the most agonizing, soul-crushing family drama you've ever witnessed. The kind that seeps into your bones, chills you to the core, and leaves you questioning everything you ever thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the people you call your own. My name is Eleanor, and what I'm about to share with you is the true story of how my family, once seemingly impenetrable, was utterly decimated by a single, flimsy piece of paper. A will, to be precise. A will that, on the surface, seemed to offer security and closure. But below that deceptive surface, it was a venomous snake, coiled and waiting to strike, its fangs dripping with deceit, aimed directly at the heart of our family, and at the very core of who my father was. We were a normal family, or at least that's what I believed with every fiber of my being. My father, Richard Vance, was a titan in the real estate world, a self-made man who built an empire from nothing but grit, sharp intellect, and an uncanny ability to spot opportunity where others saw only vacant lots. My mother, Sarah, was the gentle anchor, the quiet strength, the one who kept us grounded amidst Dad's ambitious whirlwind. She was the laughter in our kitchen, the comforting hand on our foreheads when we were sick, the steady beacon of unconditional love. And then there was Daniel, my older brother, my first friend, my protector, my confidant. He was the one who taught me to ride my bike, scraped knees and all, the one who patiently showed me how to skip stones across the pond, and the one who always encouraged me to stand up for myself. We grew up in a sprawling, beautiful home on the outskirts of town, wanting for nothing, surrounded by what felt like an impenetrable fortress of love and stability. Or so it seemed. The first, almost imperceptible crack in our perfect facade appeared subtly, innocuously, after my mother passed away peacefully in her sleep 5 years ago. It was sudden, a heart attack, leaving a gaping void that none of us truly knew how to fill. My father, a man of immense strength and boundless energy, slowly began to wither. It was like watching a vibrant oak tree slowly lose its leaves, one by one. He became withdrawn, his once booming laughter reduced to a hollow chuckle, his vibrant, energetic spirit dimming with each passing day. He started confiding less in Daniel and me, his 2 children who adored him, instead spending more and more time with a distant cousin, a woman we barely knew, a woman named Beatrice Sterling. Our childhood was a truly idyllic one, a masterpiece woven with vibrant threads of laughter echoing through our spacious home. The aroma of Mom's famous Sunday roast dinners and endless summers spent at our beloved lake house, nestled deep in the Catskill Mountains. Daniel and I were truly inseparable, joined at the hip, partners in crime. He was my first and greatest teacher, patiently guiding my wobbly legs as I learned to ride my bike, always there with a Band-Aid and a comforting word when I inevitably scraped the knee. He taught me the perfect technique for skipping stones across the glassy surface of the pond, and he instilled in me the courage to stand up for myself against any schoolyard bully. We shared every secret, whispered every dream into the night, and built a bond that felt utterly unbreakable, forged in the fires of childhood adventures and innocent mischief. Even as we grew older, moved away for college, and started our own independent lives, that bond remained the constant, unwavering thread in the tapestry of our lives. We'd always, without fail, come home for holidays, spending hours nestled together on that very sofa, poring over those old photo albums with our parents, recounting every silly anecdote, every cherished memory, every remember when
until the late hours of the night. After Mom's passing, it felt like a vital part of Dad withered away with her. His health began a slow, insidious decline. Not a sudden collapse, but a gradual fading. He became forgetful, misplacing his keys more often, forgetting names, repeating stories. His once razor-sharp mind, the one that built an empire, occasionally became cloudy, like a morning fog. We tried tirelessly to get him help, to get him to see neurologists, specialists, but he was stubbornly resistant. "I'm perfectly fine, kids," he'd always insist, waving us off with a dismissive hand, a faint, unconvincing smile on his face. "Just old age creeping up, that's all." But he wasn't fine. He started making strange, uncharacteristic decisions. He'd invest in ventures that seemed far too good to be true, pouring large sums of money into dubious schemes advertised in obscure financial papers. He'd lend exorbitant amounts of money to people we'd never even heard of, people who had seemingly just appeared out of nowhere. It was during this fragile period, this time of profound vulnerability for our father, that Beatrice Sterling, our distant cousin, suddenly, almost miraculously, re-entered his life. We hadn't seen her in decades, not since a chaotic family reunion when we were just awkward teenagers. She was charming, excessively attentive, always offering a listening ear, and quickly became Dad's constant companion, much to Daniel's growing, palpable unease. I, ever the optimist, ever the peacemaker, tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, Dad is lonely, Daniel, I'd argue, trying to soothe my brother's furrowed brow. Maybe she's just being kind. He needs companionship right now. Little did I know, her companionship came with an unfathomably steep price. Beatrice. She was a woman of mystery, shrouded in an air of quiet self-importance. Always impeccably dressed, her clothes perfectly tailored, her makeup flawless. She moved with an almost ethereal grace, yet there was a stillness about her, a reserved quality that made her difficult to read. Her smile, while frequent, never quite reached her eyes. They remained cold, calculating, like chips of ice. She'd visit Dad daily, almost religiously, bringing him home-cooked meals he barely touched, running countless errands, managing his appointments. And always, there were those hushed, whispered conversations in his study, the door often left ajar just enough for us to catch the low murmur of their voices, but never enough to discern the words. Daniel's suspicion, initially just a flicker, grew into a roaring flame. He'd strain to hear snippets of their conversations, talk of new investments, future plans for the estate, and important legal documents that didn't quite sit right with either of us. "Eleanor, something's off," he'd whisper to me late at night, his voice laced with concern. "She's too perfect, and Dad's not himself." I, ever the eternal optimist, ever the one to seek the good in people, tried to calm his burgeoning fears. "She's just helping him, Daniel," I'd insist, perhaps trying to convince myself as much as him. "He's fragile. He needs companionship, and she's providing it." Little did I know, her companionship came with an incredibly steep price, one that would nearly bankrupt our family, not just financially, but emotionally. Then, the call came. It was a Tuesday morning. The doctor called, his voice gentle but firm. Dad had passed away peacefully in his sleep. His heart, after years of giving so much, had simply given out. We were heartbroken, of course, the grief a fresh, raw wound. But there was also a profound sense of bittersweet relief. His suffering, his slow fade into forgetfulness, was finally over. We clung to each other, Daniel and I, navigating the heavy logistics of funeral arrangements, leaning on each other for support, sharing stories, reminiscing about the truly wonderful, vibrant man he had been before illness took hold. But the true heartbreak, the real, soul-crushing devastation, was yet to come. It arrived a week later. In the cold, antiseptic office of Dad's longtime attorney, Mr. Thompson. The air conditioning hummed, a low, constant drone that only amplified the tension in the room. He sat across from us, behind his imposing mahogany desk, his face a carefully constructed mask of professional neutrality, as he slowly, meticulously opened a thick, sealed, legal-size envelope with a silver letter opener. "Your father's final will and testament," he announced, his voice devoid of any discernible emotion, a flat, professional monotone. And then he began to read. His voice, once just a drone, now felt like a hammer striking against glass, shattering our world with each syllable. "To my beloved children, Eleanor and Daniel, I bequeath," and then came the bombshell, the words that ripped through our hopeful expectation like a chainsaw, "a symbolic sum of $100,000 each." My breath caught in my throat, a gasp trapped in my chest. 100,000? It was a pittance, a mere drop in the ocean compared to the millions we knew Dad's estate was worth. My mind reeled, trying to process the absurdity of it all. Mr. Thompson, seemingly oblivious to the seismic shift he had just unleashed, continued reading, his voice droning on as the words began to twist into a grotesque mockery of everything we knew to be true, everything we believed about our father's love. "And to my dear devoted cousin, Beatrice Sturming, for her unwavering care and companionship in my final years, I bequeath the remainder of my entire estate, including all properties, investments, and personal assets." The room spun. The air seemed to compress around me, making it difficult to breathe. The words echoed loud and horrifying in my ears, amplified by the sudden rush of blood to my head. Beatrice. Beatrice, the woman who had suddenly appeared from the shadows, barely known to us, now owned everything our father had worked his entire life for? Every brick, every dollar, every cherished possession? Daniel shot out of his chair, as if propelled by an invisible force, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, a furious flush creeping up his neck. "This is a joke!" he roared, his voice cracking with disbelief. "This is a fraud! My father would never do this. He loved us." Mr. Thompson remained maddeningly impassive, his composure unwavering. He simply steepled his fingers, his gaze steady, almost condescending. "This is the last will and testament, as provided by your father, signed and witnessed." But Daniel wouldn't back down, his voice rising in volume, fueled by a searing indignation. He was not in his right mind. He was clearly manipulated. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. Just then, as if on cue, as if she had been waiting for her grand entrance, the door creaked open and in glided Beatrice. She paused in the doorway, a triumphant, almost predatory smirk playing on her lips, her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, glinting with a malicious satisfaction as they met ours. "Oh, children," she purred, her voice dripping with mock sympathy, a feigned sorrow that was more chilling than any open hostility. "Did you really think your father would forget all I did for him? The countless hours, the unwavering devotion in his final, difficult years." It was then, seeing her smug face, hearing her saccharine tone, that I knew this wasn't just a simple, albeit shocking, case of a father changing his will. This was something far more sinister, a meticulously orchestrated scheme. This was a calculated, cold-blooded betrayal executed with chilling precision. We stumbled out of that office in a daze, the cold, insistent rain mirroring the torrential storm brewing inside our hearts, inside our very souls. The initial shock slowly, painfully, gave way to a burning, corrosive anger, a searing sense of profound injustice that clawed at our throats. How could this have happened? How could our father, a man who loved us fiercely, who always put his children first, disinherit us so completely for a distant relative he barely knew? A woman who seemed to appear out of thin air? The questions gnawed at us, festering, multiplying, pushing us to the absolute brink of despair. This wasn't just about the money, though the sheer audacity of the betrayal was staggering. It was about the principle, about the heinous betrayal of everything we thought our family stood for, every value Dad had ever instilled in us. It was about proving that our father had been taken advantage of, that his final wishes weren't truly his own, that his last act wasn't one of rejection, but one of manipulation.
We knew we couldn't just let this stand. We couldn't let Beatrice get away with it. The memory of our father, his love, his integrity demanded a fight. So we started digging. And by digging, I mean we practically became amateur private investigators. We spent weeks, then months, immersed in the murky world of legal precedents, elder abuse cases, and financial fraud. Our own homes transformed into makeshift war rooms, covered in legal pads, post-it notes, and highlighted documents. We spoke to anyone and everyone who had interacted with Dad in his final years. His longtime friends from the country club, his former colleagues from the real estate firm, even the delivery drivers who regularly brought his groceries. Each conversation was a painful chipping away at the carefully constructed facade Beatrice had built. We started to notice patterns. Friends mentioned that their phone calls to Dad suddenly went unanswered, or that Beatrice always intercepted them. Colleagues recalled how Dad abruptly pulled out of long-standing business agreements without a clear explanation. The pieces of the puzzle slowly, painstakingly began to fit, painting a chillingly clear picture of a man systematically cut off from his support system, made increasingly vulnerable, and then mercilessly preyed upon by the very person who claimed to be his devoted caregiver. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. Through hushed off-the-record conversations with some of Dad's former nurses, who were clearly uncomfortable but felt a moral obligation, and by piecing together fragmented clinic records we managed to obtain through careful legal channels, we discovered the devastating truth. Dad's cognitive decline was far, far more severe than we had ever realized. He had been formally diagnosed with early-onset dementia over a year before his death, months before that new will was signed, a diagnosis that Beatrice had actively and meticulously concealed from us, his own children. She had lied, manipulated, and even threatened medical staff to keep it a secret. The revelation hit us like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left us breathless. Our father, the brilliant, sharp-witted man we knew, the man who built an empire with his intellect, had been slowly,
irrevocably losing his mind, his ability to make sound decisions for years. And this woman, this parasite, had exploited his vulnerability, his fading faculties for her own abhorrent, selfish gain. The anger that had been simmering within us erupted into a righteous fury. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about his dignity, his memory, and the unforgivable crime of preying on the weak. Armed with this irrefutable, damning information, the medical records, the witness testimonies, the suspicious financial transfers, we decided to fight. There was no other option. We hired a new lawyer, a formidable, no-nonsense woman named Miss Evelyn Evans. She was known for her relentless pursuit of justice in elder abuse and contested will cases, a bulldog in the courtroom. The legal battle that ensued was brutal, protracted, and utterly draining, sucking us dry emotionally, mentally, and financially. Beatrice, with her newfound, ill-gotten wealth, spared no expense, hiring the most expensive, ruthless lawyers money could buy, attempting to paint us as greedy, ungrateful children who simply couldn't accept our father's final, heartfelt wishes. She spun a masterful tale of devoted care and filial ingratitude. But we had the truth on our side, and more importantly, we had each other. Daniel and I became an unyielding unit, our bond forged even stronger in the fires of adversity. The trial was a truly agonizing ordeal, a public dissection of our private grief. Day after day, we sat in that sterile courtroom, listening to testimony that tore at our hearts. Witness after witness, from Dad's former golf buddies to his longtime financial advisor, painted a grim picture of his rapid cognitive decline. They spoke of his increasing confusion, his erratic behavior, and how Beatrice had gradually, systematically isolated him from his longtime friends, even his trusted medical professionals. She controlled his phone calls, screened his visitors, and seemed to monitor his every interaction. We presented the irrefutable medical reports, the detailed financial records that exposed suspicious large-sum transfers to accounts linked to Beatrice, and even the emotional testimony from one of Dad's former nurses who bravely recounted how Beatrice had explicitly instructed her to keep Dad's dementia diagnosis a complete secret from us, his own children. It was a calculated web of deceit. Beatrice, of course, with practiced ease, denied everything. She sat on the stand, radiating an aura of dignified suffering, portraying herself as a selfless, devoted caregiver, a victim of our vengeful accusations and insatiable greed. Her performance was almost convincing if you didn't know the truth. When it was my turn to testify, a lump the size of a golf ball formed in my throat. A suffocating wave of grief and pure, unadulterated anger washing over me. Every memory, every stolen moment with Dad, every lie Beatrice had spun flashed before my eyes. My voice trembled at first, but as I began to speak, as I recounted the slow, agonizing erosion of my father's independence, the calculated, insidious way Beatrice had inserted herself into his fragile life, and the undeniable, tragic evidence of his profound cognitive decline, a strange clarity settled over me. The trembling stopped. My voice gained strength. I wasn't just fighting for an inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my father's dignity, for his memory, for the truth that had been buried under a mountain of lies. I felt his presence in that courtroom, urging me on, giving me strength. The deliberations felt like an eternity, each minute stretching into an hour, each hour into a day that seemed to last forever. Every breath was held, every nerve raw. Daniel and I sat in that courtroom, our hands clasped tightly, our hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against our ribs.
waiting for the verdict that would either vindicate us and restore our father's honor or condemn us to a lifetime of bitter regret and agonizing questions. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence deafening. And then, finally, the sound that would forever be etched into the deepest recesses of my memory. A sound that cut through the silence like a sharp blade. The distinct, powerful, decisive crack of the gavel. It echoed through the solemn courtroom, a sound of absolute finality. The judge's voice, clear, resonant, and unwavering, declared the will invalid, citing conclusive evidence of undue influence and a clear lack of testamentary capacity on our father's part. Justice. Sweet, agonizing, hard-won justice. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom, followed by a wave of quiet murmurs. Beatrice, her perfectly composed facade finally crumbling, stood, her face contorted in a horrifying mixture of shock, fury, and abject defeat, before being hastily ushered out of the courtroom by her equally stunned lawyers. Daniel and I just stood there, rooted to the spot, tears streaming down our faces, completely overwhelmed by the surge of emotion. We simply fell into each other's arms, clinging tightly, our bodies shaking with the release of months, no, years of pent-up fear, anger, and grief. It was over. The battle was won, our father's honor restored, but the scars, deep and jagged, would forever remain etched on our souls. The house, our childhood home, that grand, beautiful place filled with so many cherished memories, was eventually sold. We decided it was for the best. The memories, while beautiful, were now too painful, too intertwined with the legal battle, too tainted by the shadow of Beatrice. It needed a new beginning, and so did we. We decided to honor Dad's original true wishes, the ones he would have made in a sound mind. A significant portion of the estate was donated to the various local charities he had passionately supported throughout his life: the Children's Hospital, the Animal Shelter, the Community Arts Foundation. The remainder was split evenly between Daniel and me, exactly as our parents had always intended. The money, however, was never the real prize. The real victory, the true triumph, was reclaiming our father's legacy, clearing his name, and proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that he hadn't willingly betrayed us. It was about finding a fragile, hard-won peace in the knowledge that he was manipulated, exploited, but never malicious. The wounds of that battle, I won't lie, run deep. They are jagged, painful scars that will never truly fade. Our family, as we knew it, as we idealistically imagined it, was irrevocably changed by the events of those devastating years. Daniel and I, though undeniably closer than ever, our bond strengthened by the shared trauma, both carry the weight of what we endured. It taught us a bitter, agonizing lesson about trust, about the dark, shadowy side of human nature, and about the insidious, corrupting power of greed. It showed us how quickly even the strongest family ties can fray and snap under the strain of deception. But it also taught us invaluable lessons about resilience, about the unwavering courage it takes to stand up for what's right, even when the odds seem insurmountable, even when the truth seems buried beyond reach. It taught us about the enduring power of sibling love and the sacred duty we have to protect our elders. If there's one thing, one crucial message I want you to take away from my story, it's this: protect your elders. Be vigilant, Pay attention to the subtle changes, the new faces, the hushed conversations. And never, ever underestimate the lengths to which some people will go for money, for power, for control. Family ties can be strong, yes, incredibly strong, but they can also be fragile, easily frayed and snapped by the venom of greed, by the manipulations of those who prey on vulnerability. Don't let a piece of paper or a single manipulative person tear your world apart. Stay strong. Stay connected to your loved ones, truly connected. And remember, the true value of family isn't measured in dollars and cents, in assets or inheritances, but in the unbreakable bonds of love, loyalty, and unwavering support. If you or someone you know is facing a similar heartbreaking situation, please, please reach out for help. Don't suffer in silence. There are resources available, legal aid, elder advocacy groups, support networks to help you fight for justice. Don't let this happen to your family. Be the guardian. Be the voice. Be the strength.